It's a survival mechanism. We want to have a sympathetic nervous system that alerts us when there's danger, and the traditional responses are fight or flight. But we don't want to be living there all the time. We only want to be there when it's truly appropriate.
Welcome to the E02 podcast, hosted by me, Sanjiv. If you enjoy this episode, please share it with a friend and subscribe. Your support means the world to me. In this podcast, we explore a new word or phrase in each episode and how it shaped my life or the life of my guest and the journey we've taken with it. My hope is to offer you some insight and maybe a little bit of inspiration to navigate your own challenges. Today's phrase is about new chapters in some ways, and this one is a little bit personal. Evelyn Brody first came into my life as a person I went to for treatment, and then she later taught me her Temenos Touch course, and fortunately for me, over time, has become my friend. She's deeply intelligent, endlessly curious, and has built a career as an economist and a financial journalist. Her journey from a high-performance corporate life into deep body-based healing isn't a rejection of intellect, but an expansion of it. She's written 3 books along the way, including The Better Pill, and today we're talking about anxiety, not as something broken, but something intelligent. What if the body isn't malfunctioning, but it's informing us? What if the sensation becomes before the story, and what happens when we mistake communication for danger? If you're ever feeling overwhelmed and wondered whether your body is working against you, this conversation offers another perspective. So let's begin. Welcome, Evelyn. It's so great to have you on.
Thank you.
When people come to you saying, I'm feeling anxious, what do you notice they're usually experiencing their bodies before they have words for it?
Yes, unfortunately, we're living in a world where there is great collective trauma as well as individual trauma. Often people come, they can't sleep properly. They have difficulty eating. Maybe if it's a woman, their cycle is not operating correctly, it's out of sync, or it may even have stopped completely. And often people are getting sick. And it's because when we are living in a state of heightened anxiety all the time, the sympathetic nervous system, it's a survival mechanism. We want to have a sympathetic nervous system that alerts us when there's danger. And the traditional responses are fight or flight.
Yeah.
But we don't want to be living there all the time. We only want to be there when it's truly appropriate. But once you're living there all the time, all those other symptoms come through. Can't eat, can't sleep, cycles off, and the immune system starts to turn down. So we end up getting sick. On a really basic physiological level, we were not designed to be eating and sleeping and having sex while we were running away from the predator.
That's one way of putting it, isn't it?
It's a survival thing. Thing. It's very useful. We never want to get rid of it, but we only want it to kick in when it's really necessary and appropriate.
You often talk about the body as a place of truth. What does that mean in practice over theory?
The body is the place of truth, and there's a very famous book now by Bessel van der Kolk called The Body Keeps the Score. And that has been a bestseller for the last 8 or 9 years. Really a bestseller, not just amongst medical or self-help books or psychotherapy books, but, up there. The body keeps the score. And we now know, there's all sorts of interconnections between the gut and the brain and the heart and the brain. And when things happen, the nervous system has a reaction, and then the endocrine system has a reaction, and chemicals are released into the body.
Yeah.
And those are the chemicals that make us, feel stressed or calm. They're the chemicals that help us eat or not sleep or whatever. And things are held in the body. All parts of the body really have wisdom if we will just listen. And so there's no point in ever trying to medicate a pain away without asking, well, why is the pain there? Because the pain is trying to tell us something.
Yeah, so it's like in practice, how do you help someone recognize that their body's actually communicating to them?
Well, a lot of people who come to see me are beyond stress, and stress is the sympathetic fight and flight system, but beyond that is true trauma, where instead of everything being really heightened, everything goes super low. And that's a part of the dorsal vagal parasympathetic system. And in that state, people freeze, tonic immobility, striving to be unseen, playing dead, hoping the predator will go away, and often dissociating and going out of body, because what's happening is just too horrible. So they view it from the outside as if it's happening to someone else. So a lot of people who come to see me are just completely dissociated, disembodied. So one of the first things to do is to get people to go back into the body, to start feeling. I can't tell you the number of people, I've had who just think the body is there to carry the head about.
Well, I was very disassociated with my body, and I'm happy for you to carry on with that. It's like...
And, the body is not just to carry the head about. The body is really important and has all this wisdom and intelligence if we will just listen to it.
It's such a bizarre thought. Like, it's still it's amazing to me now, everything that I've learned over the years that I've known you. But it's still quite, wow, okay, there's so much intelligence here within every limb and everything, even the little finger,
Absolutely. And, it might be going slightly off track, but we now know there is neuroplasticity in the brain.
Yeah.
And the brain can change. And people tend to think historically that the brain could never really change. It was fixed. It was like a machine.
How do you mean change? Is that the thought process or what it does?
Well, both. Both. So if there's damage to one part of the brain, another part of the brain can actually learn to do what that damaged bit used to do. But also, absolutely, the thought processes can change and people can get stuck in stories. And those are the stories of the past. But one of the things I always say is it doesn't matter how bad the past was, the future can always be different.
I think that's what I need to hear today.
Future can always be different.
It's true, isn't it? We kind of forget that when we get stuck in a moment. And then because I found with all the work that we've done is that it's constant cycles. And it's kind of reapplying what you've learned and then trying to remember that. And that's the intelligent bit. Sometimes I do feel like, whoa, what am I doing?
Well, sometimes people get annoyed, and I've been annoyed when I've been at trainings and something's come up that I thought I'd already dealt with this. Hopefully it's a spiral upwards and you're viewing maybe the same problem, but from a slightly different, more evolved perspective.
So how do you help someone distinguish between bodily sensation and the story they're telling it about it?
I mean, people have stories. There are stories, undoubtedly. But again, Bessel van der Kolk, the body keeps the score, initially was a psychotherapist. And he's very fond of saying now, I've heard him saying in talks and what have you, that when something dreadful has happened to people, the story does need to be told and heard once. Particularly when there were secrets, when things were not allowed to be spoken of. The story needs to be heard and witnessed once, but it does not need to be told over and over and over and over and over again. Because the more often we tell these dreadful stories, the more the brain actually rewires to become the story. The neural pathways, it's like everything else, use it or lose it. And when we keep on repeating this story, those are the neural pathways that wire and give us the reactions in the body. So it's always to allow the story to be heard, but then to acknowledge that the future can be different. And getting into the body, really feeling into the body. And quite often, I talk to people about how there's a survivor in the head, and the survivor is really, really, really helpful and useful.
Yeah.
We're here because of the
Talk about my
survivor.
survival bit.
But we often push stuff down. Push it down, put on the happy face. See me, I'm fine. See, mine. Pushing the pain and the trauma and the everything down. But when we're pushing it down, it's still there. It's still there. And we're just shutting it off, putting on the happy face. And so what has been shoved down needs to be released. And if we don't release it, if we keep shoving things down, eventually we either explode or we implode and get properly sick. So a lot of the body work I do with people is to help them safely release that which has been shoved down. And it is not through telling the story again.
Because repeating it, I find it boring. Like now, if I hear myself saying something more than 2 or 3 times, I'm just like, why?
So it's through allowing the body to shake. There's a lot of shaking and releasing, and there's trauma release exercise classes now. I don't do TRE explicitly, but there is a very big TRE, trauma release exercise movement. It's the body's natural way of resetting. And animals do it. If a cat catches a mouse but doesn't kill it, the animal will play dead when it's trapped, and then when the predator has gone away, it will shake and shake and shake and shake. After childbirth, after anesthetics, after witnessing something terrible, people often shake and shake, and it's the body trying to reset the nervous system. And so we can try to do that consciously to try and help reset our nervous system through the shaking. And that's one of the ways I would get people back into their body.
It was one of the first things you did with me, but I think it's quite interesting because when we see somebody shaking, we see it as a natural response now in society is that it's a negative, but actually that shaking is a really positive response.
I've come out of anesthetics when I had knee surgery, and I was shaking and shaking and shaking in the recovery room. And the nurse was like, "Do you want a shot to stop the shaking?" I'm going like, "No, please, no."
Well, I'm glad they didn't cart you off somewhere else, Evelyn.
This is the body doing what it needs to do.
But that's quite challenging when society has, moved away from the natural response for so long now of what that shaking and, it's like when people dance and, they use their bodies and, it's not just celebration, it's release, isn't it? And that's, I suppose, another way of people to release that tension that they hold, because it's in every cell, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. And people go to ecstatic dance. They go to movement meditations, things like 5 rhythms, but also people go to the gym or run marathons, do kickboxing.
So what happens when we misinterpret bodily signals as danger rather than communication?
Well, that's when we've got stuck in a loop, probably. So the hyper and the hypo state, the anxiety, the hyper, and also the freezing, the tonic immobility are both survival mechanisms, but we're not supposed to be locked into either of them long term. But what happens, of course, when people keep getting traumatized or keep being stressed, the brain actually learns to anticipate that. So people become hypervigilant, looking around all the time because they're expecting something bad to happen. People who've lived in war zones, people who've lived under constant threat of attack in an area where there's a lot of violence. And so the brain kind of rewires to anticipate it will have to go into that hyper state or that frozen state. And so there's a technical term called the window of affect tolerance. The nice happy place in the middle gets squashed and squashed and squashed. So once people have been repeatedly stressed or traumatized, it doesn't take so much to push them up or push them down. And that's when it's not really necessary. And so a lot of the work is to help widen that window again so that those safety mechanisms, survival mechanisms, only kick in when it's really appropriate, really necessary.
Yeah, I think when I met you, my window of tolerance was really, really narrow. I remember the first, I was like, what is she going on about? I think it was because it was all new to me, and and it was quite an experience. It's taken me a long time to understand this and kind of not necessarily agree with it. I think it was always there as part of me, and I got it, but just to really get under the skin of it and how the impact has been. But it's quite amazing. Like, I haven't lived in a war zone. I'm very fortunate in that way. But then there's been other stresses and pressures that have just compounded and compounded. But I think that window of tolerance is a really interesting concept about where we should be. And like that kind of bouncing ball, isn't it? Is it a bouncing ball?
Yeah, I mean, we want to be in the ventral vagal branch of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the place we can eat and we can sleep and we can be joyful and we can be happy. But yeah, that's that bit in the middle, which when it gets squashed, it's not helpful, and people end up exactly bouncing between hyper and hypo. But it's interesting you say you haven't lived in a war zone, but there's been other things. And of course, Gabor Mate, who's a great trauma specialist, talks about big T trauma and little t trauma. And everybody recognizes big T trauma, massive things that happen to people. And of course, they can be very impactful. But he also talks about how little T trauma, which can be just like emotional abuse, being shut down, not being seen, not being heard. But it goes on and on and on, day in, day out, day in, day out, drip, 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 drip. And each individual incident might not appear to be so traumatic, but when it continues, it's really undermining. And so for a long time, those smaller incidents weren't really seen as trauma. But now he will say it's little t trauma, but it accumulates. It can accumulate.
Yeah, because you're obviously talking a little bit about The Body Keeps a Score again, and it's the first book that you recommended to me. It's the first book on your reading list. Why is that book first?
It changed therapy. Before that, psychotherapy, talking therapy was very much in vogue. The body keeps the score, as I said earlier. Yes, the story needs to be heard, but it's the body that needs to really have the healing. And a lot of the work I do is not just trying to deal with symptoms. A lot of Western medicine tries to deal with symptoms, possibly through pills. But everything I do is to try to get to the underlying source. And the body is holding that underlying source. Because sometimes things happened when we were very young, even perhaps when we were in the womb, when we were infants or pre-verbal. And we don't have the story in our head consciously. We can never retrieve that story in our head. But it's still in the body. Still in the body. And
that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because it's all those formative years as well of where we come from and the reaction of what we have as an adult.
And things have moved on a lot. But, you know, people who are, especially older, people who are older now and more like my age, if you were a premature baby, you were just taken from your mother, put in an incubator. No touch, no breastfeeding, no nothing, just isolated. And that lack of the mother being there, that separation.
That would have had quite a big impact on both the mother and the child.
Yeah. But that's never going to be a conscious story in the head because it's pre-verbal, it's too early. But the body remembers, the body holds that.
It's quite interesting because like that book, because my sister had recommended it to me and I started reading it and it was fine. It was like I was completely okay with it, but then I was just like, oh, I know this. I'm going to just stop. And then it was on the reading list and then I tried to read it again. I was like, oh God, no. First you then recommended it to me when we had a treatment after I'd had my first treatment. And I was just like, yeah, nah, not for me. It's fine. And then I had to read it for the course. And I think it got to a point where I had to listen to the audio book. And I think I was messaging you after each page going, oh my God, what are you doing to me? because it kind of like really made me think about everything that had happened. Well, it wasn't about everything that had happened, but just like it was quite triggering.
Yes. It can be quite triggering for people. And of course, one has to involve self-care. And I mean, Bessel gets the credit, and bless him, the book was amazing, but he didn't do it all by himself. Peter Levine was the one that came before him, who really introduced somatic body therapy. And people like Stephen Porges and Stanley Rosenberg brought in all the Vegas stuff after that. So it's not just Bessel van der Kolk on his own. There have been many others in collaboration with him, but he did the famous book. So he's the one that people talk about.
But that's a lot with the information. You know, people have the building blocks, and then there's someone that will be able to bring it together and be able to communicate it effectively. So rather than it being like lots of elements, and that's quite. I get what you're saying, but then it's a weird one, isn't it? Because nobody does anything alone anymore because there's no truly new concepts out there.
And a lot of what's coming through now, of course, the ancient healers knew about.
Yes, that's the amazing bit.
But we lost it.
Yeah, I wonder how much we did lose it. I think there's certain cultures where it is still there. It's been in the undercurrent. It's always been seen as a bit alternative, maybe, or a bit woo. I don't know. It's kind of like, I think it's always been there a little bit, but there is a lot of information that was lost about the body as society changed and developed.
Well, the Indian culture always had yoga. Always had pranayamas, always had meditations. They were far more aware of the body and the body-mind and the connection between body and mind. Yeah. So yes, the yogis never lost that.
There was this a yogi that used to come to our house when I was young, and he used to practice yoga and the breath work and do some quite, I think like, it was, and his diet was very strict, and so it was always part of my environment, but obviously yoga wasn't really a thing there yet, and he was called the yogi as well. But it was connected to my father.
I just can't believe it. You mentioned then about the diet, and I can't believe it that some GPs are still telling people that it doesn't matter what they eat. Excuse me?
Are there signs that tell us our nervous system is overloaded before anxiety peaks and the layers it builds in?
It is some of the things I've mentioned before, really, like maybe not being able to eat properly, or, getting acid reflux or indigestion, not being able to sleep properly. I mean, that's a really common one, not being able to sleep properly. Rumination, the hamster wheel of thoughts going round and round and round, and, becoming kind of just focused on one thing that just is obsessing is quite a strong word, but there's just forefront of your mind.
You do get into that though, when you're going into that anxiety, and it is like, this happened, and you're just thinking like, why am I thinking about this over? Like, I'm learning steadily, but it is like, I'm trying my best.
But there's things that can trigger people, like smells that suddenly bring back a memory.
Yeah.
Or sounds. Classic PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is people who've been in war zones or areas of fighting where there's been bombs or gunfire or whatever, and they'll hear a car backfire and they'll flatten themselves on the floor. That's a completely autonomic nervous system reaction to hearing a loud noise.
It's completely understandable. I think when I had like the height of my anxiety, and I think this was as I met you, I'd be, because it was in the COVID time, so I was very isolated, I'd go out onto the street and I'd hear a motorbike, and the chances are I would have been curled up into a ball quite quickly because it was just too loud. So I had to start wearing headphones out. And it was like the anxiety, the sound, I became really sensitive to sound, which was very odd for me.
Or if people have been attacked and, somebody's walking too close behind them. Yeah. Maybe a perfectly innocent person, but just that hypervigilance, constantly looking around, what's going to happen, expecting the worst.
Yeah, maybe they're not even realizing though that they are expecting the worst, but they're just like, why are they so close to me? Why are they in my space?
And of course, the brain historically was designed to remember danger signals and dangerous things more than remembering happy things. Because if we don't remember that the tiger is going to eat us, then the tiger eats us. We have to learn things. And even little children have to learn things that are dangerous, things that are hot, fires or whatever. We have to learn things that are of danger so that we can keep ourselves safe.
Yes.
So the brain is wired to remember danger.
So, because that's how humanity developed, isn't it? It's that kind of like instinct, and that then being able to move forward and progress. But it's kind of weird because like in nature, we, as you said earlier, we wouldn't have been in that situation all the time. It just would have been for an instant. We maybe would have shaken it off. But now we're kind of a bit more in that zone, in a bit more of a constant.
There always has been collective trauma.
Yeah, what is that?
That's partly news and social media, and things might have happened historically, but not everybody knew about them. But now we all know about all the shit that's happening instantaneously.
Yeah.
And the collective trauma is stuff that's not just ours. It's there in society. So I think Me Too sexual trauma was one of the first real representations of collective trauma when everybody started going, oh, me too, me too, me too. And then there was Black Lives Matter, racial trauma, Extinction Rebellion, environmental trauma. Then there was COVID. And then there was the Russia-Ukraine situation and the Israeli-Gaza situation, let alone all the other wars, let alone all the other political stresses and strains and shortages. So even if one is okay oneself, looking round, you just know that in the world, it is not all okay. There is a collective stress.
There is, and it's like, back in the day before we had mobile phones and it was like long news, like, newspapers, and it would have been filtered. We wouldn't have known about everything that was going on, and it might have taken what we now know in 10 minutes. It would have taken us 10 years to find that out. Or, and our bodies aren't necessarily designed for that in some ways. And we're having to like do this really massive catch up in a way that's not been seen in humanity before, I guess.
And people are holding things not just for themselves, but for their families. We now know through epigenetics, and we know through many other forms of therapy now that what we're holding does not just, there's a famous book, It Doesn't Start With Me, I think is what it's called. But it's about how we're not just holding our own stuff. We're holding things from down the lineage, what we were taught. And again, we're now in a situation of many countries being at war or facing war. And that's something that people of my generation, your generation, never necessarily expected to see again. But it did happen to our ancestors. It's there in the collective family systems.
Oh, yes. Like my mum remembers, the elements of partition, the Raj being hidden by her mum, because they were in we're in the Punjab, in the farmland, and then being hidden and having a pack of things to hide. So it's very much there. And the partition was particularly rough in what had happened in the massacres. And then also it's there. It's just shocking. It's sad. And you kind of hope that people would have learned from history, but that again is a bigger conversation than where we are now. So if we look at like a lot of your work is actually about endings, transitions, potentially losses and change. How does the body usually register those and respond? Because does the body respond before the mind catches up, maybe?
I mean, that's an interesting question. And often if there's real losses, whether it's a death or the ways have parted or whatever, the mind will tend to ruminate and will tend to behave as if that other person was still there because attachment bonds have been formed.
Yes.
And yet another part of the mind knows that they're not there anymore for whatever reason it is. But when there's real healing, I think the body can take a few days sometimes to catch up with the energetic shift that has taken place. And so sometimes if people come and see me, they ask what they're going to feel like afterwards. And the truth is, I never know. Because sometimes people leave feeling really elated and joyful and they want to go out and dance and celebrate. And sometimes they just feel like they need to go home and go to bed for 3 days because they just need to let everything that has come out, come up, been seen, been recognized. They just need to take a little bit of time to process that.
And sometimes it takes a lot longer, doesn't it? Sometimes the work might land 6 months later, even.
Yes. And quite often I will give people homework exercises or suggestions of things to do, as you know. And so, it takes people some time to work through things. And of course, if people just try and stuff it back down again, it, hasn't done anything. But there's lots of ways. Journaling is a great one.
Can be difficult though, because I spiraled with the journaling, but that was because I think I wasn't doing it right. So there's elements of it that are great, isn't there? But I think you have to do it in the right. Can you go into what you think the ideal journaling situation is?
Each day, at least put pen on paper and just whatever wants to come out. And some people can do it, really mindfully with affirmations or seed thoughts or mantras. And there may be times when that's appropriate, but it's actually, it's cathartic. It's allowing what is there to come out. And some people don't like to write. Some people like to draw. Some people like to draw or color or make beautiful mandalas or whatever. But it's that, again, it's taking what has been stuck in and repressed. It's allowing it to come out in a safe way.
Yeah, I think when I did it wrong, I think was just before I did this course with yourself. And it was, I think I'd gone through a very difficult situation. And I think I was saying the same thing over and over again. So I was enhancing the story and like my anger towards it. And I feel, I would say that I would still be justified in my anger towards it, but I think I spiraled with it. I was like, I rang my friend. And I was like, oh my God, I'm actually getting worse. Like I feel I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything that I've learned. And then he was like, Sanjiv, you can actually make yourself worse if you're not a little bit mindful about it.
One way that people can maybe reduce the rumination even is to write, and then not necessarily even in a journal, just on a piece of paper or draw on a piece of paper and then burn it.
Yes.
Okay, well, I've got rid of it, into the fire.
Yeah, no, I'm a massive advocate for journaling. I think that it's one of the easiest and simplest ways of helping yourself just process something and actually just being able to get it from out of your head where you're on that hamster wheel to put it into a concise sentence is quite different.
Yeah. And I teach, as you know, I teach the shaking, breathing, shaking. So when something's, we can't, shit will happen in life. I think that's guaranteed.
Yes.
But when something has happened, something has made you feel anxious or annoyed or sad or whatever it is, acknowledge that has happened. Can't do anything without acknowledgement. Acknowledge that person has pissed me off. I can just shove it down and put on the happy face and not say anything. Grit my teeth. Or I can go, that's made me annoyed. Doesn't serve me to shove it down. I'm going to breathe and imagine it leaving, letting it go, so that it doesn't accumulate.
Why do you think anxiety often intensifies around moments of change, even positive ones?
People are terrified of change, the unknown.
Yeah.
And that's why many people stay in horrible relationships, abusive relationships, rather than leaving, because the fear of the unknown. And sometimes those fears are more justified than others. We live in a society where people need a roof over their heads, they need money. So often part of the fear is about survival. If I leave this relationship, if I leave this job, if I leave this place, I haven't got any money. We lack a support system. There always used to be communities.
Yes, it's changed, hasn't it?
And actually, in your culture, there still are more communities. I think it's true.
I think that's changing as well, though, because I was having this conversation with a cousin recently, and like we were kind of reminiscing to back in the day, and it was just like, there's no way that I have the level of community that my parents had within the social setting. Like here, even, it was phenomenal, and like now it's very disjointed. And you know, because my grand's house, it was an amazing house, a little terrace, 2 up, 2 down, and the door was always open, and it didn't matter what time of day. People would just pop through, have a cup of tea, have a chat, and it would, you know, there might be 5, 6, 7 people that might have come that day. But that was a sense of community, real community. But like now it's like you have to call, like, you know, we still have that house in our family, like my uncles live there. And I was just like, I tried it. And they were like, no, Sanjiv, you just have to give us a call on the mobile. I would open the door, which is a safety thing, which I get. And I was just like...
And so many people are displaced, either in a different country, a different culture, even within a country. You know, we don't have these multi-generational families living in close proximity so much anymore. And so people often really don't have much support. And we all need community, and it's a question of finding the right community. But yeah, change can be really scary. Even if it's a new opportunity, there's still a bit of fear around it.
There is, and then you have to still work through that fear while you settle into that new opportunity, whatever it might be, because you can find yourself grabbing onto old patterns. I'm not saying I've done this recently. Just like you're always working with things. So lastly, if someone feels a little bit overwhelmed, what's a gentle thing that they could do with their body in the next 60 seconds?
Breathe is the obvious one, but slow breath, conscious breath work, conscious breathing. Breathing in, maybe holding it for a few seconds, breathing out and letting any sound or any negativity that wants to come out with the breath go. And, you know, there's so many different breath works, and breath work is really popular as a therapy these days. But certainly breathing. And the other thing is the shaking.
Oh my God, yeah, I know the shaking. I say that it's because you've made me do it. I'm very good at it now. I'm getting better. But if something resonated today, maybe take a moment and pause and notice your body and try not to fix it. Just listen. Anxiety might not be the enemy. It might just be some information that you really need to hear. Perhaps the next chapter begins with paying attention. I think I need to do that. Thank you, Evelyn, for your wisdom and your friendship. And thank you all for listening. If this conversation helped, please share it with someone who might need it. And I'll see you in the next episode of You and You.